before the headlines, before the championships, there was a player the system kept trying to redirect, not reject outright, not celebrate either. Just move him along. No clear path, no guarantee. And yet, years later, that same player would stand at the center of 3 NBA championship teams. Not as the chosen one, not as the face, but as something harder to find and even harder to stop. Sam Cassell was never supposed to take the traditional road. He wasn't built for clean narratives or predictable timelines. His story didn't rise in a straight line. It drifted, stalled, restarted. At times, it looked like it might disappear completely. But what stayed constant was something quieter. A belief that didn't need permission. A confidence that didn't wait for approval. He grew up in East Baltimore, where distractions were never far away and discipline wasn't optional if you wanted to stay focused. Basketball became more than a game. It became distance. From the streets, from the noise, from the decisions waiting around every corner. It gave structure to a life that could have easily gone in another direction, one that didn't come back. At Dunbar High School, the expectations were different. This wasn't just any program. It had produced names that carried weight, players who didn't just make it, but mattered. Cassell stepped into that environment and delivered. He scored. He created. He led. On the court, there was no question. But off the court, something quieter began to close doors before they even opened. His grades didn't match his talent. And in a system that measures both, that imbalance matters. Opportunities started to shift. Offers became conditional. Paths became uncertain. So instead of stepping directly into a major college program, he took a detour, one that many players never return from, a place where potential is often forgotten rather than developed. Maine Central Institute was supposed to be a reset, a chance to rebuild what had been overlooked, but it felt distant, not just geographically, but emotionally. The rhythm was different, the environment unfamiliar. Within weeks, he went back home, not because he couldn't handle it, but because the transition demanded something deeper than basketball, something he hadn't yet found. He returned again, this time more certain, more aware of what was at stake. But even then, the system held its line. He was recruited, he had interest, but he was still ineligible. And in college basketball, that word carries weight. It doesn't just delay opportunity, it reshapes it. Forces you to reconsider everything you thought was already decided. So he went where few stars planned to go, junior college, a place that exists outside the spotlight, where players aren't followed but forgotten, where talent alone isn't enough. You have to prove something deeper. Consistency, resilience, patience. For Cassell, it wasn't a fallback. It became a proving ground. At San Jacinto, he didn't just play, he dominated. Not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that earned it slowly, game by game, performance by performance. He became one of the best junior college players in the country, not because he was expected to be, but because he refused to stay where the system placed him. That performance finally reopened doors. Florida State Seminoles offered him a path forward, a return to the stage he had almost lost. And this time, he didn't hesitate. He stepped in ready. Not just to participate, but to establish himself among players who had taken a route he was denied. At Florida State, he wasn't the most athletic, not the fastest, not the strongest, but there was something else, a pace to his game, a control that didn't rely on speed. He understood timing, space, moments. He played like someone who had already experienced setbacks, because he had, and that changed how he saw every possession. He led, he produced, he competed, and slowly, the narrative began to shift, not dramatically, not loudly, but enough to be noticed, enough to enter conversations he hadn't been part of before. The NBA became a possibility, not a certainty, but a door that was no longer closed. In the 1993 draft, he wasn't at the top, he wasn't even close. Other guards were chosen first, names that carried more hype. More expectation, more immediate belief. But Cassell was selected, late in the first round. A quiet decision in a loud night, the kind that doesn't make headlines, but sometimes changes them later. He joined a team that didn't need him, Not immediately. The Houston Rockets were already built to win. Veterans filled the locker room. Leaders were established. Roles were defined. For a rookie like Cassell, the expectation was simple. Learn, wait, stay ready, and don't disrupt the structure. But Cassell didn't arrive quietly. His voice carried. His confidence stood out. He spoke like someone who already belonged, not in a disrespectful way, but in a way that challenged expectations. Even around players like Hakeem Olajuwon, he didn't shrink. He inserted himself into moments others might avoid. On the court, his minutes were limited. He came off the bench, watched more than he played. But when he stepped in, something shifted. The game slowed down around him. He didn't rush. He didn't force. He executed. And slowly, trust began to build, not because of his potential, but because of his presence. Then came the playoffs, a different environment, higher stakes, less margin for error. And somehow, that's where he became more comfortable. He made shots, important ones, timely ones, the kind that don't just add points, but change momentum. For a rookie, it was unexpected. For Cassell, it felt familiar. The Rockets won the championship that year. His first season, his first real test, and already a title. But what made it different was his reaction. While others celebrated the journey, Cassell admitted something years later. He didn't fully understand it. Not yet. Success had come too early, before the struggle had fully settled. The following season, the expectations grew, not for him, but around him. The team was still focused on winning. And once again, they reached the top. Another championship. Another moment where Cassell contributed in ways that didn't always show in numbers, but mattered when it counted. 2 rings in 2 years. For a player who had been redirected, doubted, and overlooked, it should have secured his place. But the league doesn't always work that way. Stability isn't guaranteed. And for Cassell, it didn't last. Trades came next. Not 1, not 2, but 3 teams in a single season. Phoenix, Dallas, New Jersey. Each move resetting everything. New system, new expectations, new uncertainty. For many players, that kind of instability erodes confidence. It creates hesitation. But for Cassell, it did something else. It forced him to adapt. Quickly, completely, he became a starter, a leader, a voice. Not because it was given to him, but because the situation demanded it. And once again, he responded, not dramatically, but effectively. He produced. He led. He stayed consistent in environments that weren't. Eventually, he found a longer stretch with the Milwaukee Bucks. Stability returned, at least for a while. And with it, a new version of his game emerged. More control, more responsibility, less proving, more sustaining. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building something. Years passed. Roles changed. Teams shifted. But one thing remained. His ability to deliver in moments that mattered. It didn't always look flashy. It didn't always dominate headlines. But it was reliable, consistent, and in a league built on pressure, that carries weight. Then came Minnesota. A new chapter. A new opportunity. Playing alongside Kevin Garnett. Something clicked. His game reached a new level. Statistically, it was the best season of his career. But more importantly, it felt complete. Like everything before had been preparation. The team advanced. Expectations grew. And for a moment, it felt like everything was aligning. Until it didn't. A celebration. A moment of confidence. The now famous gesture after a big shot. And then an injury. Subtle at first, but significant enough to change what came next. He played through it, but not at full strength. And in the Western Conference Finals, the difference showed. Minnesota fell short, and with it, the possibility of another championship slipped away. Not because of lack of effort, but because of a moment that symbolized everything he was. Confident, fearless, human. Late in his career, the league gave him something it hadn't before. Choice. After being waived, he finally had a say in where he would go next, and he chose a team ready to win, the Boston Celtics. There, alongside familiar faces, he added one more chapter, not as a centerpiece, not as a headline, but as a presence. A veteran who understood timing, who understood moments. And when the Celtics won the championship, Cassell secured his third ring. Quietly, almost fittingly. His career numbers don't demand attention. They don't define greatness in the usual way. But his story does something else. It reminds you that not every path is meant to be clean. Some are meant to be tested, redirected, challenged. And sometimes the players who are moved the most are the ones who matter when it matters most.